Time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News. Are bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. And joining us tonight are the Mirror's chief football writer John Cross and the Sun's chief sports writer Dave Kidd. Welcome along to you both. Good evening. We'll hear from you in just a moment. Let's quickly run you through the back pages as we have them so far. To look at the Mail, Rory's ready to rumble. Talking about Rory McIlroy and that heartbreak he suffered at the US Open. Well, has he managed to clear that out and just focus on the task at hand at Royal Troon? The Open starts tomorrow. Chelsea at war's the big headline. Argentina star Enzo Fernandez slammed by teammates over racist chants. From there to the Metro, you're the one for me. It's all about Leny Yoro as Manchester United sets to add a second summer signing after signing Joshua Zirkzee and beating Real Madrid to the race to buy Leny Yoro. Also there you can see, well, yes, the claret jug in sharp focus. Not just Rory McIlroy, but maybe even the likes of Tommy Fleetwood, hoping to have a good week up at Troon. In the Sun, how's Three Lions dream? Toon boss, if it's meant to happen, then it will. Newcastle boss Eddie Howe revealing for the first time he's always had an ambition to be England manager. And also you can see their focuses on Joachim Löw maybe sniffing around the England job. Back at the Times looks like this. United move for £52 million team. That is the Lille defender Leny Yoro, who's just 18 years of age. And then again, can Rory bounce back in Dumfries and Galloway at the final golfing major of the season? In the Telegraph, again, here is Rory McIlroy signing a few autographs. I'll make a fist of it, he says. McIlroy faces down major demons. He's been having a little bit of private time with Luke Donalds to concentrate on his putting. And Postecoglou in England frame. Perhaps not what Spurs fans want to hear, but could Ange Postecoglou be the man who succeeds Gareth Southgate? Back page of the Star looks like this. In your face, United trump Liverpool and indeed Real Madrid to land £52 million Leny Yoro. And you can see at the top left there, Blues splitters. Enzo says sorry. Enzo Fernandez offering both a public and a private apology to his teammates. Troon Raider, yes, more on Rory McIlroy there at the Open. The Express looks like this. Rory goes to war. Troon's totally relentless. Rory McIlroy believes his putting will be the key to winning an Open war of attrition this week. Again there, Enzo Fernandez. That's spelling trouble for his new coach, Enzo Maresca. And also the Ashes are target for Jofra Archer. We know he's come back into the England fold recently at the T20 World Cup. Finally, the back page of The Guardian looks like this. Again, we have pictures of Rory McIlroy signing a few autographs. Is he putting a brave face on things, or can he really keep this, wipe the slate clean and focus on the task at hand at Troon and write a new chapter? It's been a decade since his last major win. And you can see there, yes, Fernandez's apology to Chelsea teammates over racist chants. He says it's not his character. Plenty to discuss then with John and Dave. Right, so papers in nice and early, which is lovely to see. John and Dave, let's chat England, shall we? Because, of course, we are still debating and talking about, you know, who might well be the man to take over from Gareth Southgate. If we look at the back page of your newspaper, Dave, The Sun, how's Three Lions dream? Now, we always suspected that Eddie Howe might be in the frame. Certainly has proved his worth at Newcastle. Now we know for sure, because he's revealed it in a book due out next month, that he would have this sort of dream of managing the Three Lions even before Gareth Southgate left the job. How good a fit would Eddie Howe be, given the situation with England right now, the platform that Gareth Southgate has set, but ultimately now a new manager with a new philosophy?
Yeah, Eddie Howe will be regarded as the best English successor, and they'd rather have an Englishman. The fact is, he's got a job. I think there were times towards the end of last season, I think people in the FA made the sort of natural assumption that as Newcastle's season tailed off and ended up in mid-table, that there might be a natural parting of the ways between Eddie Howe and Newcastle. Eddie would have left there with his head held high, having done very well the previous couple of seasons, and then he'd be a perfect successor to Gareth Southgate. But surprisingly, actually, the Saudis are stuck with Eddie Howe, showing great loyalty to him and insisting they still want him to stay. It's interesting that Eddie's gone on the record there a little while ago, and it's not a particular timescale point, but he does want to manage England. And that's an interesting one. But whether the timing is right at the moment, he's in a job that is very well paid, with a club that's hugely ambitious and wealthy. that's a big club job to leave to take the England job. It's not a natural. I think maybe 20 or 30 years ago, if you had a big club job, England would always be seen as a step up. I'm not so sure if that's necessarily the case now. But it's an intriguing one. I do think Howe's the best Englishman for the job. So therefore, he's always going to be a contender. It's just whether Newcastle, whether the FA will be able to pay a massive compensation, be able to manage Brady as well.
Yeah, the others in the frame on the FA shortlist, Eddie Howe, Graham Potter, Lee Carsley, and they would prefer an Englishman, but that doesn't necessarily have to be the case, John. And in fact, they're on the back page of The Sun. Joachim Löw says that he fancies the job, and not just the only German who's been linked to it. Of course, Jurgen Klopp has also been linked to it as well. What do you feel at this point on the notion that an English manager could succeed Gareth Southgate, given that this last English manager did such a fine job in terms of the results in the major tournaments over the 8 years that he was in charge?
Well, David, I do think, even though Mark Bulling, the FA chief executive, has been on the record in saying that basically, we want the best man for the job, it could be an overseas candidate, like Dave, I really feel strongly that the FA's preferred position, and I do say preferred, would be to have an English or British manager in charge, simply because I think they put so much store and faith into the St George's Park pathway, if you like, to develop players and indeed coaches. Now, if you can't then develop an England manager, from that pathway, I'm sorry, that is reflecting badly on your system and your setup. It's noticeable, isn't it? Spain have just won the Euros, and it's all about the kind of the process and bringing coaches through. So, and development. And so I do think that would be a priority in my mind. Look, there's going to be some overseas candidates. There's going to be a lot of discussion, isn't there, basically, about kind of the whys and the wherefores. Do they need someone a bit more coaching? Do they need someone, who a bit more man management? Because, international managers don't see the players for very long, really. And I think Gareth Southgate has done a terrific job in his 8 years because of that connection with the players. But then, do you go with someone similar like a Graham Potter, or do you go someone opposite like, an Ange Postecoglou? Those are the sort of the dilemmas I think they've got. But I do think they'll take the next 7 weeks and really hope to make an appointment. I do think in that 7 weeks, there's so many names out there. Graham Nicholas knows, on the back of The Sun there, knows Eddie Howe so well, doesn't he? He's writing this book about him, and, he's got connections there. I'm sure that story about Joachim Löw will be right. I'm not doubting it for a moment. It's a cracking story because he's so associated with Germany, but he's 64 and he's been out of the game for 3 years. He's like, I didn't realise this until I read the story, that his last game in charge was that defeat to England in the knockout of the last Euros. So, I mean, there's a lot. It's going to be a really in-demand job. That's what that story is saying to me, that the England job is still very sought after.
Well, John, you mentioned him there, back page of the Telegraph. Postecoglou in England frame. Spurs Australian coach has been on the FA radar for years. Even though they're saying that Lee Carsley could be handed the reins temporarily, just England have got some Nations League games to think about coming up soon. Dave, what do you think of this idea? I mean, Ange Postecoglou didn't seem to know much about it. Links to the England job when we spoke to him after the pre-season game against Hearts tonight. What do you reckon? I mean, in terms of his incredible character and the ability to sort of unite a squad and play in an entertaining way, there are some boxes being ticked there.
I thought it was bad enough when there was an Australian in charge of the English cricket team. They're not honestly in charge of the English football team, which seems strange. He is a great character, and he's got a good pedigree. And there's certainly a lot of people around Spurs who've always thought that he might have his eye on the next job. Given the Spurs, he's a big job in itself. That's interesting. He's an ambitious guy. Again, same with Eddie Howe. He's in a big job already. There'll be compensation. There'll be, would you want to leave a big club job for this? And I think that what I've actually been encouraged by is that the FA aren't necessarily going to rush into this appointment. And they might well be willing to appoint Lee Carsley or someone else as caretaker manager for the Nations League campaign and try and get the job right for the World Cup qualifiers that don't start till next March. They have got a decent timescale there. Those Nations League games are pretty low-key games against Ireland, Finland, Greece. England have been relegated to Group B, so they're going to look and wait and see what their best option is, quite possibly. And I think that's encouraging. I don't think you want to rush these appointments. I think that's what happened when Sam Allardyce was appointed after the 2016 debacle. And he was the wrong man for the job, quite clearly. And it took a while to have Gareth Southgate coming originally as caretaker manager, and then proving his credentials, and things turned out right in the end. I think you want to take a long view on this job. It will be very much in demand. There's all sorts of issues, whether you want an Englishman or not, whether some of the guys you want who might potentially want are in big jobs. Things might become a lot clearer after these Nations League games. So I think they should, they're quite right to keep their powder dry if that's how they decide to do it. Postecoglou, my gut feeling is, will not be the next England manager there.
OK, let's move on to Manchester United and go to the back page of the Star for this one. It's another top 10 deal in your face. United trump Liverpool to land £52 million, Leny Yoro. John, United doing their business early in this window. Joshua Zirkzee already in the building, and now the young Lille 18-year-old looks like he'll be joining. There is a picture there of Erik ten Hag with a smile on his face. It seems like United are backing their manager, who they are sticking by.
Absolutely, and so they should. This one written by the nicest man in Fleet Street, David Anderson, and David is making the point in this story that that United have beaten not only Real Madrid to the player who was definitely on their radar, but also Liverpool as well. So listen, I think Liverpool have been in a position, haven't they, that basically if they let one go, then they'll maybe bring a centre half in. But I do think that we are talking about one of the most sought after young defenders in Europe right now, and this is a major coup for United, because honestly, I do think he's been pretty plain, isn't he, saying that he fancied Real Madrid. He's only 18. He's been at Lille in their first team for a couple of seasons, played 60 odd games. His stats are remarkable. It's interesting for United. They've gone for Yoro rather than kind of bide their time and go for Jared Branthwaite. And Everton fans will be relieved, I'm sure, although there might be some angst from Everton about sort of kind of negotiation tactics, really. But it just shows you, doesn't it, really? They're picking up one of the brightest young prospects in Europe. They're doing it for a lot cheaper than they were quoted for a young English player by Everton. So they're almost avoiding the English player tax, if you like. And doing their business early, and I'm sure that Ten Hag will be very encouraged. Striker in, centre half in, spending big over the 80 million mark already. Perhaps potential outgoings as well. So they're really getting going and doing some business to back their manager, both ins and outs. Exciting season, perhaps. Yeah, and it's covered on the back page of the Metro as well. You're the one for me as the headline there. United set to beat Madrid in race to land. It's not just beating them, Dave, it's completely smashing Real Madrid out of the park in terms of the numbers here, both in terms of the fee they're willing to pay, the wage they're willing to pay the player. What do you think this means then for the other centre-back that they're interested in, which is Matthias de Ligt? And Bayern Munich have set an asking price of £42 million, which United don't seem prepared to pay.
I've certainly been talking to them trying to bring in two central defenders this year, so I wouldn't say the Ligt deal is dead at all. But Yoro is, as John said, he's a very exciting youngster. I think United have signed too many older players who were looking for one last payday over the last few years. And I think under Jim Ratcliffe, that's one policy that's going to change a lot. I think they're going to be looking at youth with Zirkzee as well, who's come in, the Dutchman from Bologna. That they are looking at a top young European talent. I think that's what Ten Hag's wanted. Højlund last year, a bit hit and miss, I thought, but it's still, if it is a long-term project. The problem is, of course, if you start signing too many young players and they don't hit the ground running, you end up in a Chelsea situation where everything's looking 5 years ahead, and the manager doesn't have 5 years. He has 5 bad games, and he's in trouble. So, listen, it's a very, very promising capture for United, given the amount of interest there was in Yoro. So, but it's going to be having backed Ten Hag, they had to go the whole hog. They had to give him a new contract, start signing young players, and really believe in him, which is bizarre, given that if he'd lost one game at the end of the season, the FA Cup final, Ten Hag would have been sacked. But the whole of Manchester United's future may have completely switched on that one game if it turns out to be a success. Yeah, could be a transformational summer, couldn't it, at Old Trafford? Dave and John, thank you for the moment. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll look at more of the back pages, including this in the Daily Mail.
taking on two other big stories. Chelsea at war, Argentina star Fernandez slammed by teammates over racist chant, and of course, Rory McIlroy going for another major. Well, it's been 10 years since he won his last one at the Open, which starts tomorrow. You're watching Back Pages tonight. Welcome back to you watching at home. Welcome back to the Mirror's chief football writer, John Cross, and the Sun's chief sports writer, Dave Kidd. Thank you so much for being with us tonight, guys. Let's have a look at the back page of the Mail. And let's talk about Enzo Fernandez. This is a real sort of what was a Copa America which had its low points, didn't it, in terms of fans storming the stadiums, in terms of really ugly scenes in the stands, and then the aftermath and Argentina winning and Enzo Fernandez live streaming celebrations. I mean, John. First of all, this sort of beggars belief, doesn't it? In the modern world, that someone can think of chanting that and live streaming it, and now having to simply, fall on their sword multiple times, publicly, privately. What's your take on the situation as it stands right now?
Oh, I think it's such a mess. It's as you rightly say, David, I just cannot understand for the life of me how a group of footballers have sung that and a players then live streamed it, and in any way think that that's acceptable and that they would come up with such a chant and then sing it. It's just so offensive. It's so appalling. And, there's few things in football that really sort of kind of shock you, but I really did feel quite appalled by that one today. And how on earth do you fix that? I mean, it's all very well for Enzo Fernandez to say, look, that's not me, that's not my character. It was a statement really trying to sort of kind of, ride back from that. Chelsea have promised an investigation. They've initiated one already. But how on earth do you fix that? Because honestly, how does he walk back into that dressing room? That is the point. They've got to share a pitch together. They've got to kind of, fight for each other in a football sense. And some of those guys will go and hang on a minute. And Fofana's rightly said, I mean, I really admire him for what he's done, because he put it on the line. He really has. And I think basically it would have been, easy for players to kind of sort of shy away from that and sort of kind of not put forward their true feelings. But he's the one that deserves the admiration, I think, on this. It's an appalling set of circumstances. And it's a terrible situation for Maresca to immediately come in as the new manager and to try and solve. I was trying to rack my brains earlier about sort of, where you've had, potential, sort of kind of racist incidents within a dressing room, if you like. And sort of kind of that affected this. But this is almost feels out on its own, if you like, simply because it's just affected a whole group of players, and it's a whole group of players singing it. It's hard to see a way back at this point for Enzo Fernandez. He might have cost £105 million, but my word, Chelsea have got a lot of fixing to do on this one. They cannot let it ride.
You mentioned Wesley Fofana in Kieran Gill's piece, John. He mentioned his comment saying this was, uninhibited racism, but then had to disable the comments on his Instagram because he himself got an avalanche of abuse by just standing up to that. I mean, that's the world we live in right now. And it's not just Wesley Fofana, it's David Fofana as well. There are seven French players in the Chelsea squad. How much of a real distraction is this? And, something really tough for Enzo Maresca to deal with. The season's not even begun yet.
I think Maresca, a new boss who's come into a big club, quite a slightly surprising appointment, and this dressing room, which has been, I think, even before this broke, seen a slightly dysfunctional, an unusual club with lots of young players, most of whom have struggled, some really big name signings. So it's a difficult situation to come into anyway. For a bomb like this to go off before he's even properly started the job is extraordinary. As John said rightly, this is a guy who's £106 million. He was the most expensive British player for a few weeks until Chelsea bought another midfielder for even more. But I don't know how you repair that sort of damage. I don't know how. I mean, the apology just reads, it's just ridiculous. It's almost as if he's just sort of accidentally sung a song and live streamed it that quite clearly, is racially offensive to several of his own teammates who play for France. It's just, it beggars belief. And Chelsea, it's the last thing Chelsea needed. This is not a club where everything was running smoothly before this. I I don't know what happens. You can't imagine Fernandez being welcomed with open arms and people shrugging their shoulders and saying, "Okay, mate, apology accepted." I just don't see that happening.
I'm going to stay with you, Dave, and we're going to move from, well, the Mail saying Chelsea at war to the Daily Express saying Rory goes to war, and this is about the Open starting tomorrow, the final major of the golfing calendar. Troon is totally relentless. We know how tough that back nine is, Dave. But Rory McIlroy's taken a bit of advice from Luke Donald on his putting. How do you feel he's shaping up mentally, psychologically for this challenge?
It's such a difficult one when you lost in the circumstances he did a month ago at the US Open. He's waited so long. He's had near misses before, but nothing quite like the one at the US Open. Rory is still one of the great talents in world golf. He's had some years where he's been fighting against the Rebel Live Tour. He's been very much a leader of that. Since he's taken a bit of a backward step from that sort of position of the last couple of Opens, it's been like civil war at the golf. McIlroy seems to be concentrating more on his own game now. Came so close, but then to lose in such circumstances is going to be really difficult for him. To win any golf event, you're in a field of 60, 70, 80, 90 people, and wins. The opportunity to win one doesn't come around very often. To win a major, even less so. If you were to win a Troon or straight on the back of that last major performance, it would be one of the most extraordinary achievements in sporting history. Just as you said, psychologically, how you get over basically a huge choke like that.
Let's go from a man who's going to be taking on the golf course to a man who's been out on one, and it's really lovely to see it. It's Alan Hansen. John, we've got about 45 seconds. First pictures for him since his recovery from a serious illness. This is, oh my goodness, we needed to see this, didn't we?
What a great story. I love this. My colleague from News, Jeremy Armstrong, I'll be back. I mean, a month ago, it is a month, he was really sort of kind of, fighting. We feared for Alan, and basically his great passion and love these days is golf. And honestly, to see him back on the course with the clubs, absolutely the best golf story I think you'll read all week. Fantastic news. Absolutely best wishes to him. He's a great character, great legend of the game. Fantastic to see him in good spirits and health again.
Absolutely. Wonderful sentiment to end the show on as well. John, thank you very much indeed. Dave, thanks to you. Appreciate your company. We'll see you again very soon, I am sure. Now, if you missed any of the show, there's another chance to see Back Pages tonight, hour. The show also available as a podcast. Just download Back Pages on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your pods. Join us again Thursday night. Our guests will be Jonathan New and Charlie Wyatt.